Yep, can you hear me? All right, and can you see the presentation? Awesome, and can you see Pam's typing popping in the top right screen, and do I have to turn off all notifications? Is that a no, Pam? Can anyone else see a smiley? All right, I'll take that as a no, and hopefully there's no 2FA codes that pop up or anything. G'day guys. My name's Edward Farrell, and this has been a bit of an evolving talk since about the start of 2018. Just on some of the fun I've had in the 802.15.4 space. It originally started out as what's a paper-based review of this space in the early part of 2018, which then turned into some more drives. And probably since about August, September, my team and I have been employing wireless kit, wireless tech outside of 802.11 into a lot of our pen tests. And I'll talk specifically about one engagement we had towards the end of this slide deck. But yeah, it's kind of been an interesting space in that there's bits and pieces out there, but to me, there's probably not as much as I would actually expect. And I think that's probably something I touch on during the talk. So I'll just go through this slide and then a bit on how I went down this path, a little bit on the exploration, and then a couple of things we've seen over the last 12 months. So yep, this is a terrible photo of me over in Defcon from a few years ago. I've been pen testing now for 10 years. I've been running my own practice for about 4.5 years now. And I also lecture down at the Defence Force Academy in Canberra. So one of the things that drove this talk was actually the stuff I'd been doing down at ADFA. In 2017, I started doing the wireless pen testing, which at the time was, in my experience, fairly bland and really consisted of, okay, cool, you can crack web. That's kind of been a problem for a few years. There's got to be a lot more out there. So SCR got introduced in the early stages. Then we started looking at all these other weird and funky protocols. One of them just happened to be a point a student raised during class, which was, hey, what about Zigbee? It's like, okay, well, what's Zigbee? So to me, I like starting off with 802.15.4 just because Zigbee is part of it, and you know, it's one element of it. It's probably one of the more widely adopted standards out there across 802.15.4, which defines things at layer 1 and layer 2, whereas when we start going elsewhere, we start looking in layer 3 upwards. We're looking at things like Zigbee, LW Mesh, 6LoWPAN, maybe a few others. A lot of the networks and the way the actual the way the protocol itself is designed is really around low power, high interoperability, and high reliability. So if you think about it, a lot of the kit using, say, Zigbee or any sort of 802.15.4 standard is really just designed around something with lower packet rates, higher requirements for maintainability and survivability, and also being able to use the technology over an extended period of time over multiple devices. So what are some characteristics about the protocol itself? So it does operate in the 2.4 gigahertz ISM band, which can actually be a bit deceptive. So I've experienced a lot of pen testers or a lot of people, when I start writing about this on LinkedIn, they'll say, well, yeah, you can just use a pineapple. And it's like, well, no, you can't. One of the other characteristics you see is there's usually a bridge or some sort of control point that leads out, say, to the internet that then leads into like an analytics environment. The hardware itself typically has little or no user interface. They're designed for low power as well, and that's an interesting piece I'll talk about with security later. There's also low interaction, low packet rates, which means discovery is also quite hard. And also security may not have been fully conceptualized. So as I said, the traffic is kind of difficult to pick up, say relative to doing an 802.11 war drive. But that doesn't really stop it, especially on, say, some of your larger environments, such as hotels, where you're looking at hotel locks, or some of the new building precincts in Sydney. But, you've still got the same fundamental issues we've had for the last 115 years. So, at a physical layer level, you can locate and monitor. That being said, when you look at 2.4 gigahertz on on a waterfall, being able to differentiate between 802.11 and 802.15.4 is a little bit difficult. But still, if you're dealing with processing at a higher level, then you'll be able to get there. Which of course means those characteristics fall through as we go up the protocol stack. Other things as well, we can certainly jam the protocol itself. So if you actually have a look at how it's set, it's actually operating on a very narrow frequency, and just given the power requirements, it's quite easy to jam. And I've just been able to jam this at about 10-15 meters in my own isolated environment. Just as a short demonstration. Something a colleague has told me is something around firing wireless electronics at this range. I don't think, I haven't seen anything along those lines, but this really comes back to the power requirements. The other one as well is power consumption. So if the devices are experiencing a lot of interaction or sending and receiving a lot more packets than you'd expect based, say, on queries, that's going to drain, say, any onboard batteries. For example, one of the solar farms I've looked at, I understand that everything's battery powered for those devices. Then at layer 2, we have, of course, media access control. Once again, a lot of the same issues. We typically rely on looking for beacons at this point, so devices beaconing out or any sort of traffic coming across. There's also a vulnerability within 802.15.4, which deals with association flooding, which allows you to take down some of the bridges. Higher up, we're looking at things like route manipulation, encryption, any sort of business logic specific issues, or any fundamental vulnerabilities in the network architecture that could be targeted. And then even higher up, we're looking at, say, any unintended functionality with the devices, how they've been implemented and set up. I've also been reliably informed that it's possible to overwhelm a device to a point where it's no longer functional, which then means, say, if you've got a deployment that took you 3 months to roll out with a few $1 million of hardware, you're now going to have to redo that entire deployment. But then again, if you look at things online and what I've seen out on the internet, issues or products used in Australia was limited. So I was really keen to understand where we were using this. I also wanted a bit of exposure with doing capture and analysis, and do so in a way that was practical and relevant and could really inform other people. So for me, this was about actually seeing what was out there. So my initial setup was the device on the right, the RZ Raven, which interacts with the Zigbee stack, but then there was a couple of other bits and pieces out there. So about 18 months ago, I got the CU Open Sniffer, which at the time wasn't supported for Zigbee or using any product, using any tool sets. That's now started to change. That piece of kit's fantastic for the simple fact that you can dive into 900 megahertz. But the most effective device I found was, in fact, the cheapest. It was a $5 Texas Instruments receiver on the top left there. Funnily enough, I found it easier to receive packets on that one device than I did on the RZ Raven. So my first go was trying to beacon out from network. So this was just a setup I built on a Nexus 5X with the RZ Raven. walking around, I managed to find a network that was available outside of Westpac. So off the back of this, I then built out a full war driving, a proof of concept for war driving, which just involved 3 of the RZ Raven, 3 of the Texas Instrument dongles, just doing channel hopping with a GPS receiver on a Pi and a simple power pack. Just off the back of that, doing a 1 kilometre walk around the city, I was able to pick out all the sites that you can see on the right-hand side there. One of which also included one of the banks and also the new EY building down on George Street here in Sydney. So I was actually having a lot of issues with the software setup on this first run. So I had to do a couple of adjustments, which is really just playing around. But of course, I then found the actual, someone's built out a proper capturing, a proper tool set for doing war driving, available at the GitHub link there. Now, the issue you have is because you don't have channel overlap and because the infrequent nature of the packets, you kind of want to be able to set up yourself so that you can listen in on all channels. Now, there's 16 channels at the 2.4 gigahertz part of the at 2.4 in the 2.4 gigahertz band. So of course you need 16 dongles all capturing and also all outputting a fair chunk of data to you. So the power supply was a bit of an issue here. I had to get a specific battery pack, which was a little bit painful. The Pi was also having some trouble with processing as well, so I actually ended up going for a laptop for the actual big war drive. So this was about this time last year in Canberra. I was able to capture about 549 packets over 90 minutes. Feel free to grab the QR code on that one. I'll just leave that there. But for those of you who have visited Canberra, the top section there is a lot of new high-density residential, a couple of malls, and down the bottom there is, in the centre, is government departments and a bunch of hotels. And this was kind of one of the things that we started to see. I'm pretty sure the purple sets that we were seeing there were from the building towards the south. But on the blue ones, for example, from what I gathered, I believe they were in fact hotel locks coming from Hotel Kurrajong. I haven't been able to confirm that. A couple of other buildings. So this was just tons of hotel locks that were just calling out. Now the other problem with this part of Canberra was it was actually a fairly built-up area. So getting making a clean call of where something is calling from was proving to be a little difficult. But then we had this one, which we were able to later conclude was actually coming out of Parliament House. So Sydney yielded a hell of a lot more traffic across the city. So once again, I'll just leave that up for a bit so that you can all take a photo of the QR code. But yeah, this was a 3.5 hour drive up and down the city. If you have a look along Harris Street, there's a ton of data centers, but we also have the Star Casino as well. So I believe the yellow one. So just for everyone's reference, the colors indicate a channel, and then there's a bit of extra data I've included in Google Maps. This is a completely brand new part of Sydney that's just been built, which is called Barangaroo. Brand new towers. A lot of the networks there, I've come to learn, are controlling either levers that open and shut and let in light to windows, or are dealing with powering lights on and off. There's also, I don't think there were any locks here, but I haven't gone into any more detail on this one. So look, that's kind of helped shape a bit of understanding where things were, and getting an idea of, all right, well, if we could actually attack things, what would it look like? So this was a bit more of an extended piece. This is a solar power plant down in Canberra. I decided to set a device capturing on a single channel there for about 24 hours. I still have the packets for that. Some of it hasn't come through quite as clear as I would like, but there was interesting stuff there in terms of pattern of life analysis. And from what I've been able to gather, a lot of the content getting sent was really just monitoring data that's going back into a central point there. So this year, I've got a bunch of hardware that's still sitting in my office that I haven't really played with, but we actually did manage to have an engagement recently where we identified a Zigbee network in a building that was just talking out. We started walking around, and then we identified these, just on the bottom left-hand side there, a couple of temperature monitors for a facility. These temperature monitors would communicate back to a bridge, which you can see on the bottom right hand of the screen, which then in turn would send out SNMP data to say, hey, here is the current temperature of this facility, adjust the air conditioner accordingly. Pretty much everything you see there was reasonably accessible from where we were standing. The network key was stored in clear text on the web interface, but we could actually start to identify patterns in terms of how the actual transmitters on the left-hand side were sending. I think we worked out that each device was doing a transmit. I think it was something to the effect of once every 5 minutes. And so one of the things I'm really curious to start engaging in is using that sort of period and packet length to start characterizing some of these networks, just because there's not a lot we can employ out there to identify some of the stuff from a pen testing standpoint. So I'm really keen to start going down that path. But I mean, this even took us about 3 to 4 hours to work out. Well, there was 3 to 4 hours on site during the day, and then there was our site surveys 1 week and 2 weeks out. We were like, all right, there's something here. What is it? And we couldn't really determine it until we started going deep over 3 hours. So yeah, I mean, our biggest thing here is, well, if we can start claiming the temperatures of a certain is at a certain degrees, can we then start manipulating the behavior of an air conditioner? So that's a bit of what some of the stuff I've been going through over the last 24 months. So I'm happy to open up for questions. There you go.
Can you hear us, Ed?
Yeah.
Perfect. We have a question here.
The dead device was not in the power station. I mean, we just monitoring flat out that device.
Sorry, the audio. Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so with the desktop device you had monitoring that solar power plant, was that monitoring constantly, or are you essentially only waking the device up every 5-ish minutes for that?
Oh, no, that's sending out traffic. I think we got it. Packets in a matter of like 4 2, which was just massive. I haven't seen anything done that before. But that's also because there were a lot of points out in that solar power plant.
Yeah. Sorry, that broke up pretty bad. Did you hear that, or was anyone else having this video? Sorry, the video was killing it, I think.
Okay.
Yes,
Really, you don't get to see my face anymore. There you go.
There we go. I've just turned my audio off.
we might kill our video too, Ed, just to save some bandwidth.
Yeah, no, the call quality just like died, I think, once we were trying to do video. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, so the actual solar power plant is actually probably been one of the loudest places I've done stuff. I'm really keen just to explore that a little bit more. But we were getting a couple hundred packets a minute, which is really unheard of in that space. Or I haven't seen it anywhere else. That was pretty cool.
Just out of random curiosity, do you know who runs that facility, that power station?
Yeah, it's a conglomerate down in Canberra. In fact, there's 3 power stations down there. They represent about, I think, 10 to 15% of Canberra's power supply.
Yeah. I guess I was just curious about who else would be running these kind of systems if you've got new hotels and casinos and everyone else. The fact that the energy sector is using such a new technology where they're traditionally quite, I guess, conservative with their IT security and general RF use at all, it was kind of, a bit weird.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions for Ed?
Ed, with your war driving and the 16-channel, 16 receivers, was there issues with descents or anything like that where the antenna efficiency come into question with regards to not hearing maybe some of the quieter signals?
Not particularly, no. I mean, I'm certainly not an expert in this. I'm definitely not an expert at at layer 1. But I mean, my deduction really is because the nature of the protocol. It's yeah. Look, I don't think I saw any, but it's also coming back to, if you look at it, a Zigbee network will have multiple devices. So if you miss one during your war drive, ideally you've got to pick up another.
Yeah, okay.
So, once you've established that, then maybe start walking around doing a slightly more detailed capture.
Yeah, okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, it might be a situation where you ended up with, 100 times as much data, but, you can't, maybe it's overwhelming and there's not a lot of point having that much anyway.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess if you walk, you sort of, you can always move closer to the building, for example.
Yeah.
If the losses were problematic, you could overcome that by walking up to the front door. Or...
Yeah, well, the other thing as well is from a sort of road war driving standpoint, if you're thinking about it, I mean, I'm still picking up signals, 20, 30 meters away quite clearly. So that's usually, that was pretty cool.
Awesome.
Ed, when you were in Vegas, did you do any scanning there?
Alas, I didn't, although...
Too busy.
Yeah.
Partying.
I think you just set me a challenge for this deal.
The conferences in Defcon and
I've got a question about the antenna. Just wondering if you were sharing one antenna across those 16 receivers?
No, they all had their own individual antenna. So if you actually, do you want me to bring it back up again? Bring the screen.
Is your car look like a mine or?
Yeah.
Pokemon. Yeah.
So actually, Pam, if you want to just do a Google search for CC2531, if you have a look on the top of the device, that's just their individual antenna there, and that's actually been quite reliable. I have just started playing with another device from Freak Labs, which actually comes with a proper 2.4 gigahertz antenna. So yeah, I think that's probably going to be another challenge, is see if any of them work better.
Yeah, I'm just have it up on the screen here, Ed. I just didn't share.
Okay.
Awesome.
And you're using standard 2.4 gigahertz SMA antennas then, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions for Ed? When are you coming to Melbourne to do this?
Yeah. What's the next talk?
Let me have.
No pressure.
Yeah, no, well, look, I'm probably going to be in Melbourne again sometime this year. So if anyone has a car and wants to go for a drive, let's drive.
We've got a horse, a bike, and a couple of cars. So I think we're covered.
Excellent. Yeah, no,
And a cat.
I want to look at that and go.
So if you want some followers, we'll happily follow you along, Ed.
That's going to look suspect.
With a GPS, just
All right. Thank you very much, Ed. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Because I know you were super multitasking. You were cooking dinner while you were doing this, so that's pretty impressive.
It's a skill. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
Throw a bunch of stuff in the pot and you're sorted. So.
Well, enjoy your dinner. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, folks.
Bye from Melbourne.
See ya.